Breaking tonight, brand new testimony in the Capitol Riots investigation. The January 6th House Committee just wrapped up its 8th hearing during prime time, and tonight's focus was what was going on, or perhaps what wasn't going on in the White House as that mob stormed the Capitol. We've got team coverage on what was said and what it all means. Jordan Fisher is standing by at the Capitol, but I'm going to begin with you, John Henry, to walk us through tonight's big revelations.
Hey, Leslie, this hearing focused on those 187 minutes between President Donald Trump's speech on the Ellipse to the time he posted a video on Twitter telling the rioters to go home. Multiple deposition witnesses told the committee they asked the president to publicly condemn the violence at the Capitol during that time, but instead, he did nothing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kinzinger.
Around the beginning of the hearing, retired MPD Sergeant Mark Robinson corroborated past committee testimony claiming the president argued with the Secret Service.
Was upset and was adamant about going to the Capitol, and there was a heated discussion about that.
But multiple witnesses said the president ultimately retreated to the White House dining room as TVs around him showed the beginning of the Capitol siege. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany said the president wanted to call senators about the certification vote, while White House counsel Pat Cipollone said he and others called on the president to condemn the violence.
People need to be told. There needs to be a public announcement.
Sarah Matthews, a former deputy press secretary, said it would have only taken Trump a minute to get to the press briefing room.
He could have been on camera almost instantly.
But instead, around 2:24, he tweeted Vice President Mike Pence did not have the courage to do what needed to be done. Trump's former deputy national security advisor, Matthew Pottinger, told the committee,
"Looked to me like the opposite of what we really needed at that moment."
Around the same time, surveillance video showed people breaking into the Capitol. Senator Josh Hawley running from the crowd. Radio chatter even picked up Secret Service members saying they were scared for their lives.
There were calls to say goodbye to family members.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger concluded the president,
he chose not to act.
Now, President Trump released a statement during the hearing on his Truth Social account. He once again criticized Pence, saying what a difference it would have made if the state legislatures had another crack at looking at fraud. The committee said more hearings may happen this September. Leslie?
Yeah, the end of this part of the chapter, but it picks up again in a few months. Thank you, John. Let's head out to Capitol Hill, where our WUSA 9 digital investigative reporter Jordan Fisher has been closely following the January 6th investigation. He was in the room for tonight's hearing. Jordan, let's talk about these videos we saw toward the end, these never-before-seen videos of former President Trump. These are the raw recordings of him creating videos on January 6th and 7th, and we know his advisors wanted him to call those rioters off, but he did not stick to that script, did he?
Yeah, Leslie, that's right. We heard a lot tonight about the exhausting efforts by Trump's closest advisors and his own children to get him to make a speech on January 6th, which he eventually did. But what we saw tonight is that the draft for that speech didn't look anything like what he eventually said to the public. In the draft of that speech obtained by the committee, Trump was supposed to say, "Let's respect our institutions." Of course, what we heard on January 6th and what the public heard on January 6th was something different. He told his supporters, "We love you, you're very special," and he told them, again, the election had been stolen from them.
This election is now over. Congress has certified the results. I don't want to say the election's over. I just want to say Congress has certified the results without saying the election's over, okay?
After all that, he still did not want to admit that the election was over. And Jordan, I have to ask you, for many people in the room, this was the 10th time they've had to sort of relive January 6th. And there was a moment where we saw Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal visibly emotional, wiping away tears. And then we could see other shots of the officers who responded that day. Of course, Officer Harry Dunn, Officer Michael Fanone, Officer Brian Sicknick's partner, Sandra Garza. Could you tell how they were reacting to what they were hearing?
My seat for all of these hearings has been directly behind the four officers and Ms. Garza, and I can tell you that none of these hearings have been easy for them, particularly today's. Now, I was down at the federal courthouse earlier today, as was Mike Fanone. He was giving a victim impact statement in a January 6th case involving a felony assault on police. Of course, he was one of those officers who was assaulted, knocked unconscious, suffered a heart attack. We also heard today, or saw rather, from a text from former President Trump's communications director during his re-election campaign, Tim Murtaugh, explaining that the reason he believed that former President Trump would never address Brian Sicknick's death was that if he did so, it would be implicitly blaming the mob, and that he couldn't do that because those were, quote, his people. So obviously very troubling for the officers, very troubling for Ms. Garza to hear that, difficult for everyone involved.
Sure is, and this is, again, just one part of this saga. We'll be back at this again in September as the committee continues their work. All right, Jordan, thank you so much. By the way, our team is dedicated to covering this entire Capitol riot investigation, which is still ongoing, we should mention. Just point your phone's camera at the QR code to sign up for our Capitol Breach newsletter. We'll email you updates every week and when news breaks.